my viewers is like in the middle of the day, so I'm not sure how much people are actually going to like pop up. But that's not the point. The point of today is my enjoyment.
Mm.
So we're having fun.
Wait, I should drop the stream link in my places.
Oh, and yeah. Feel free. I think I remembered to poke, like let people know what was happening in mine. I've got a birthday emoji and an excited confetti emoji, so I think we're perfect. Hello, Formica. Thank you. Okay, I'm glad everything seems good and you can hear everybody. Very nice, very nice. Okay, I think we're good. And I feel like neither of you two are the sort, so I don't need to worry about it. I'll more have to, like, stream 3. The people that pop up into stream 3, I have to warn them. I don't like when people sing happy birthday to me. It freaks me out. So, like, we're just gonna, that's not a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that either.
I'm like the kid that would like crawl under the table and try and get away at restaurants. Like, I won't go out to eat with people around my birthday because, like, I don't like it. I don't like the public attention, says the streamer.
And it's just not a good song. It's the same line 3 times.
And they're all just staring at you as they perform at you. And it's like, what do you do with your face? Are you supposed to be like, oh my gosh, this is so great? Are you supposed to look like, I don't know.
Choose one of them, one specific person. Flat features stare directly into their eyes with increasing intensity.
I love it. Oh, hi George. Also, yes, Earth constructing noodle. I feel like that's great. It's good. It's good. It's good. Like, I mean, okay, there's like 6 people here right now. Do y'all want to introduce yourselves? Like, I don't know. I feel like it's gonna be chill, but maybe people will watch the replay and want context at the beginning. I don't know.
Okay. I'm world building pasta, in spite of the name I've chosen for myself here. I do the world posting pasta blog. I guess I technically have a YouTube channel. Anyway. Hello.
And I'm Bibloridian, or Bib for short, and I also do world building stuff, primarily on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Very good, cool. I'm here. I don't know. I feel like everyone here knows who I am. I do stuff. It's my birthday. That's why we're world building. Also, hello, Pavilia. Enjoy work. Happy to be your background noise. Okay, so we chatted about this briefly, but I have 2 things prepared for us to do today. We can hop between them. It could be something where we start with one and then like, but okay, let me pull up. I have share screen things set up. Let's switch over this tab. Okay, so one of the options is we can start another map for one of the like clusters of pillars, which is mostly just doing things. Also, thank you, Demo. So this is the global map with there's like tons of stuff in between all of these areas, but these are basically all the areas where I expect there to have sizable numbers of pillars in habitable enough areas that you can actually have societies developing. So those are like the major societal group areas. And everything north and south of this is kind of not super habitable for the pillars. Just because they're all high up, right?
Yeah.
So what we have to look at, I have the 2 examples that we've done, and then I copied in all the like climate modeling stuff we did. So like what I expect the climate regions based off like the Köppen climate zones to be for each rough latitude range per height of the pillar. So the green ones are the ones that I kind of like, they're the non-polar climates. They're the ones I expect more likely to be civilizations there, larger civilizations, given that like there aren't oceans that they can access. So like it's kind of a lot less habitable. I'm sure somewhere it'll happen, but for the most part, the little green boxes. And then at each of those latitudes, just more details of the various climate modeling stuff we did. and notes on what that would probably be like at that height. So if we need to come and reference this, we can.
Okay.
Yeah. So I pulled that over. And then for an example, this is the big one that we worked on. Yeah. So like we have like our climates, our biomes. Do I have the elevation map in here? No. Well, that's useful. Pretend there's elevations. It's great.
Okay.
You get this part. This is the elevation map, I think. And basically what I did is I just pulled like a random place off Earth because there's no, like, we're not using tectonics here. We're not using anything like that. We're just taking random places on Earth and then just like drawing a bunch of squares on them and adjusting the elevation for like where we want the baseline to be. And then that's kind of what we're using for elevations here. Just that's the vibe. Yeah. I don't know. Thank you, Caleb.
What do the sides of these pillars look like? Like, are they're just straight?
Yeah, for the most part. Like there might be some like they'll be rough enough that like you could potentially climb them to some extent, right? They're not like what's the word? Like sheer completely flat surfaces. Like they're craggy and rocky and stuff. There might be some cave-like things in them, but for the most part they're pretty just straight drop, which is part of the magic of Pillar World.
Because something I'm sort of realizing here is if they're all sort of in the tropics or that like fairly low latitudes, they're all straight, you might have this sort of, aside from like the climate on top, there's gonna be this kind of interesting seasonal pattern around the edges where like winds in the tropics tend to be very consistent. You're gonna have like all the probably rain and moisture tending to come down on one side during one season and a slightly different one at another season. And then the sunlight is only really gonna reach one side for parts of the year. So it's sort of like, aside from like the Köppen climate zones, there's this kind of seasonality there that might play into what sort of stuff lives there.
Yeah, which is one of the cool parts of it. It is like some of those effects are not like lessened isn't the right word, but all the pillars are very, very small. So it's a little harder for them to get a ton of that different. Like there's a few that are slightly larger, but there aren't any larger than like, say, I think I've been using Ireland as the example that like the biggest ones, which there might be a few, might be the size of Ireland, but most are much smaller.
Yeah, but they're sort of like, I know there's kind of like in like Kenya and Tanzania, there's like some areas where like you have like fairly small, very steep volcanoes, and you get like actually somewhat significant like rain shadowing around the edges with their seasons, just because like at that low latitude the wind is like so consistent.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, that makes sense. I may have to like there's probably a chance that like I was less what's the word? Generous with the rain shadows when I did this. Let me pull it up. Well, I have to pull it up separately. Okay, here we go. Yeah, because for the most part, all of these, the arid ones, are like in the bigger rain shadows, but like they might need to be a little bit bigger than that, given that.
There's a sort of thing where they might still like get sort of enough rain overall, but they might have cold and or wet and dry seasons.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hello, Miles. Thank you. And hello, Edgar. Thank you. Yeah. I feel like something like that could be interesting because, like, again, when I took these, the elevations are fairly gradual for the example I had for a lot of these. It could be interesting to do something that's a little bit more extreme to play with the rain shadows a lot more. Or even have like pillars that are like touching each other but like at different elevations, so you have
I was wondering, like, are these all kind of the pillars, are they all like kind of the same height on top, or do you have a lot of like range between pillars?
Let me pull up. So like the only ones that we have for the most part here are the ones that are more, where's this map? The ones that are more in the habitable area or the decent enough size. So there'd be more smaller ones of various heights around. But what I had been doing was taking like the ground elevation and then just like basically plussing it up an even amount. So depending on how far they are, they would have a tendency to like follow a general slope. They're just missing a lot of the land in between.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here's the elevation one. Okay, let me switch over to this real quick. This one. Yeah. So this is, you can make this fit a little better. Yeah, that's the elevation map for this one. So you can see the green is 1 kilometer, which is kind of the lowest they can live on. And for the most part, all the pillars are above that height. Below that, they would all die. And then the like purpley red gets up to like 2.5 kilometers. So you can see there's like, you can see the trend of what the elevation might have looked like before the pillars were there.
Yeah.
I don't know what I means. Is that like an Ireland country code or something?
I believe that's the
Oh,
Irish flag.
It's
Okay.
if you look on the YouTube thing, it's the Irish flag. It just, I guess, didn't show up properly.
Okay.
They're
That
like
makes-
emojis of the.
Yeah.
I still have such a bad. I don't look at chat nearly often as I should. I keep forgetting that it exists, which I get the sense is bad streamer practice.
Eh,
I feel like it really depends. And also I feel like a lot of the 2-person like conlanging streams eventually or essentially have figured out that it helps if like one person pays attention to it and then the other person kind of doesn't, just to like keep things moving. But
yeah, I think there's a balance to be achieved there, so you're not getting constantly sidelined or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, like, I think it depends on whether it is distracting for you or not. Like, some people I feel like it would totally throw you off to constantly be like having little side conversations. And yeah, George said a lot of times it's about checking in once in a while. And we've seen how well that works, so let's have a Booba, says Caleb. Yeah. Okay, so that's the first option is we come up with our like idea, right? Like this one was to essentially have a archipelago of pillars, right? So none of them are close enough to travel between by like bridges or anything. The only way to travel between these is essentially by the dragons that they have that they ride. So we have that one, and then
We have any airships or anything, or are we too early technologically for that?
So we don't have powered airships, but what we do have is essentially sort of like engineless planes that would be pulled by the dragons. So it helps provide their own lift. But they're not powered, right? It's just like so they can pull it behind them. I'd wanted to do hot air balloons, but then I realized that up this high, for the most part, the winds are not going to be conducive to that. And like I've flown at like over 10-mile-per-hour winds in a hot air balloon, and it is not fun. So not good. Wait, planes with wings? I know, it's a crazy concept, George. Absolutely crazy. What was I doing? Dragon air sleds. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Do I have anything for this one? I don't think I put anything in there other than this like one map, which I don't think I can open. But the other one essentially was that it would all be, everything in here is really close together and close enough that they can have essentially rope bridges that are made out of like dragon silk, which has a lot of high tensile strength and stuff. And so they have the bridges that kind of connect everything through all those like little bridges. So that was like the idea for that one.
Well, the thing that immediately occurs to me is in terms of biogeography, the
Mhm.
closer the islands are. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different because there's no ocean. And like one of the main ways that animals disperse, or species in general, disperse between islands on Earth is through rafting. But that's not going to be an option for these things. It'll have to be through, flight is the big one. Or just
Yeah.
if you're a plant, if you have just light seeds that can get blown across the gap, etc. So basically, the closer the pillars are to each other, then the more similar their biota is going to be. And so for the ones that are really like tightly clustered like that, you could get like a sort of seamless like spectrum of species going from one island to the next, where they have like similar forms, but they'd still have some degree of isolation. So they would you would get like a radiation of like a single type of animal across a whole cluster. But on each pillar, it would be like slightly different.
Yeah.
Whereas for the ones that are further apart, they'd have like radically different biota that had nothing in common at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I expect that to be a big thing, especially like the flightless ones to be very diverse between all the pillars. And then the flighted ones, like depending on their what's the word? Like how far they can easily move around.
That's some of the
George.
thing, because I think I've been a bit tuned out, but you've been focusing, I think, a lot on like how dragons have been evolving. But it sort of occurred to me the other night, it's like you've probably opened up like a lot of niches for like other things to get at least some amount of gliding. So there's sort of like, you could imagine a lot of like, other groups on Earth that haven't really gone to gliding. You could just sort of play around with just sort of throwing it on them. And then, yeah, there'd be like way more potential variation of flightless birds or like other things, flightless dragons, flightless bats. Like that.
Anything that has any ability to travel between pillars is going to be very strongly selected for. So you would probably get like gliding is pretty common on Earth. Like there are loads and loads of different groups that have settled on gliding independently. Only 4 of them have ever taken it to powered flight. And depending on how you wanted to play it, you could either say that dragons just have a complete monopoly over all of the flying niches, or you could say that some other group has also settled on flight and have them, in the same way that birds and bats, manage to share the aerial niches between them.
Yeah. I haven't thought too much about other things other than just like the general niches that I know, like there'll be insects, right? There'll be some various like small rodent type things, stuff like that. But I haven't thought too much on what else would be there. I know I want like the giant like dragonflies because those are cool. I've considered maybe keeping some like chain of like actual pterosaurs, but like having them be like nocturnal or something. I don't know. Just something that like wouldn't compete directly. But I do also have nocturnal dragons now, so I don't know. George asks, can we get situations of birds dropping fish eggs and such so that even that carries over?
Yes.
Yeah, I would expect that. I would expect like there are still I don't know exactly how this will work, but like when we were initially sketching everything out, we're pretty confident that like the storms would be able to carry up fish from the oceans up to populate the water sources on the pillars. And then presumably they'd move them around. And we decided we probably would want some dragons that are just not very nice and like playing with other dragons and or fish or other things that would just like pick them up and take them random places because they think it's funny, or just drop them, to their dooms because that's also funny.
Well, there's weird cases of like fish that by like genetic evidence have managed to move between like totally disconnected like lakes and caves and things. So we know they can get around. We're not totally sure how it happens, but I think you can assume they get up there somehow.
I have a distinct memory from when I was a kid when just in the garden, like we were doing some yard work or something, and there was a wheelbarrow in the garden, and then there was a rainstorm, and then like a few days after the rainstorm, I remember going to the wheelbarrow, which was now like partially full of water from the rain, and there were some like water boatmen, like aquatic beetles, like inside the wheelbarrow. I was thinking, how the hell did they get there? Like,
Yeah.
wow, in
That's
the
cool.
last like few days, somehow their eggs must have got into this wheelbarrow. It's like, I remember being extremely perplexed by that. So basically, the moral of the story is like, yeah, generally animals are very good at getting to places. If there is a conceivable way that they can survive in a place, they'll generally find a way to end up there.
Yeah. Yeah. So there will be fish in the water sources. The one thing I'm not sure about, but I don't think I really need to worry about it, is given that now the fog is everywhere, if a storm were to pull things up out of the ocean, it would probably die before it got anywhere, but it could have gotten there originally and they could move it around and it could move from one pillar to another. So like I don't think I need to worry about it too much.
It's the sort of thing where you might pick up 1,000 fish and like 950 of them die,
Mhm.
but the last 50 is enough.
Yeah. 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 So that'll be good.
You've seen The Future is Wild?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because they have in that, I believe it's episode 12 is the one in the desert where the entire ecosystem hinges on the flying fish that are blown over the mountains by the storm, and then the fish carcasses land, and then the beetles lay their eggs in the carcasses, and it all happens from there. That's what that reminds me of.
It would be very interesting to have a branch off of like something similar to flying fish, but where like the fish, if they like, because for the most part, all the water is going to end in ton of waterfalls off the sides of the pillars. So like they'd have to like stay in the water sources or like more protected lakes and stuff. It'd be interesting if they could like glide, and if there was like a lower pillar they could. But I feel like that's crazy.
A species of guppy, I think somewhere in Africa, where as part of their life cycle, they need to climb up a waterfall to get to a lake. And this waterfall is, I think the statistic is like it's thousands of times higher than their body length. So they just like attach with their mouth, attach with a sucker sort of thing on their underside, and just scoot all the way up the waterfall over the course of days. So if you have something that could like glide from one place to another, to like a waterfall or something, just somewhere where there's water, and then just sort of scoot their way up.
I'm gonna make a note for
work.
that.
I noted it down somewhere.
Let's see.
Is it a guppy or is it? It's a goby, the Nopili goby.
What was it? Something goby?
The Nopili rock climbing goby.
I can't spell.
Almost. No silent G.
And if they do have some kind of suction organ to help them like climb up rock surfaces and things, that could be a useful pre-adaptation for attaching themselves to dragons.
Ooh.
And then the dragons carry them to different pillars. So you'd end up with something like a remora.
I already have a dragon that is sort of similar to that, but instead of a sucking organ, it's more of a Velcro type thing with the fur patterning.
Yeah.
But I like that, having that there. That would make a lot of sense. I like that. Sky Remora. Miles says, this is a bit of a piggybacking on Nikolai's idea, but imagine, say, an animal who needs to get to the top of El Capitan and can remain perched mid-mountain, kind of like a camping climber fish. Dragon leeches. What about digging through the rock?
It could be a spawning behavior. So like in maybe on the top of the pillar, in like the relatively level part, that's where a lot of the predators would live, presumably. Whereas if there are waterfalls that lead down to like more sort of isolated, like caves or pools, maybe those would be safer places for the eggs. So the adults could glide down to these pools, spawn there, and then the young would hatch in the relative safety of these pools. And once they've reached maturity, or once they're ready to spawn themselves, they would start climbing back up.
Yeah.
I like
then
that.
You can make this work with that sort of seasonality I mentioned, where it's like as different rainfall patterns around the perimeter happen during seasons, it would be like wetter or have like more water coming down at different points. They could like sync their life cycle with.
And that could be like a special event for the cultures that lived on those pillars. It would be like the salmon runs. Like, you know, it's the season of this climbing fish thing.
Yeah, they all start coming up.
And there are thousands of these little things just sucking their way up. And it'll be like a really good, predictable food source.
Why don't you let me fix that? Whatever, it's going to be spelled wrong. I'll fix it later. I like that. I think that's fun. And it gives like something unique that, like, I like the things where they're specifically adapted for Pillar World. Like, those are kind of, like, there's a lot of stuff that would work here too, but I like the stuff that specifically works there. It's very fun. About rocks. I do love some rocks. Yeah, they probably can't dig too far through the pillars. Yeah, it's very hard rock for the most part. Yeah, it would mostly be the upper layers. Okay. Those are so cool. I do like that. Those would be like very fun looking too. And I imagine these would be some of the more successful fish. Okay. So
I've been given a gift.
Oh.
I suppose it would be once a species has developed a phoretic relationship, like using another animal as a means of transport, it's pretty easy for them to evolve a parasitic relationship from that starting point. So you could have parasitic fish.
What if cleaner fish, but not necessarily fish, for dragons? Because if dragons flying around are like kind of the main big thing moving between pillars, and they have, you know, this fuzz or fur or whatever, then like there's going to be a lot of advantage for everything else to sort of cling on to them. So they might get loaded down with a lot of stuff. So what if there's something they can go to and just like spread out their wings or whatever, and it comes to like pick everything off of it?
Like all the ones that will like nibble on your toes and stuff?
Yeah.
That's cool. That would be cool. It would make sense.
There's probably going to be a lot of competition among different species that are all trying to use the dragon as a means of transport. And so, yeah.
Then I wonder what type of like, because if you have all these fish that are selecting for things to take advantage of the dragon for like moving around or various other things, how they would defend against that then.
It's not necessarily fish with the cleaner fish idea, to be clear. But I mean, there's probably a whole arms race you can do with that. With like secretions the dragons have, or just different types of fur, feathers, or whatever it is, pycnofibers, I guess.
Yeah. Depends on the dragon, but that would make sense to have. Okay, someone would like to know,
Gopher.
Bib, do any living animals generate enough electricity where you could have rocks that are ferromagnetic and animals that are electromagnetic?
Oh, blimey.
Also, hello, Jake. Hello, Majiko. Thank you.
I don't know enough about the physics involved.
Mm-hmm.
All I can say is that electroreceptivity and electric weaponry has evolved many, many times. And I don't know what the maximum voltage that an animal would be able to generate is. I don't know if there's like a proper upper limit.
It can get pretty high, but I think the thing is that's the sort of thing that works pretty well within bodies of water, but not really in the air very well at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much every radiation that has, well, there is only one animal, one terrestrial animal that has electroreceptivity, and that's the echidna, because the echidna eats worms in moist soil, and so by sticking its nose in the ground, it can detect the electricity of the worms in the soil, and so it uses it like a sort of metal detector to hunt for worms. But even in that case, it still relies on there being like a lot of water in the environment. If something was fully terrestrial, then electroreceptivity would not really have any great benefit.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's not that much like water environment here. Like in general, like I'm sure there'll be some pillars that the way they're shaped would maintain a decent bit of water on them, but I don't imagine like there's not going to be vast oceans or large anything like that. So an orchid fish possible. Some sedentary sort of deal whose life cycle depends on its fertilized eggs being airdropped by a dragon onto human canopies and can breathe moist air. Interesting.
I mean, I think secondarily becoming terrestrial in kind of a similar way to mudskippers or air-breathing catfish. Pretty common, especially if there are places where the water sources are transient. If there is like this seasonal rainfall effect where, you know, the lake or river that you're living in regularly dries up and you need to like move to a new area for water, then you could very well see lots of fish evolving along a similar sort of line to mudskippers. I love mudskippers. They're very cool animals.
Yeah, that would be cool having something like that. I do like that. You're right. I'm such a bad speller on this thing. The things will limit that you fix it very well. Okay, did I miss anything else?
Also, I think it's worth pointing out that the echidna evolved from a platypus-like semi-aquatic ancestor, something that was already living in the water full time. And so it's a case of having retained that feature from a more aquatic ancestor rather than something that's fully terrestrial, evolving the electroreceptivity specifically for looking for worms, you know? So it's not like you'll have some fully terrestrial animal that then evolves electroreception just for looking at that stuff in moist soil. It would probably have to start from a more substantially aquatic starting point.
Yeah. It makes me wonder, where did my biomes go? Here we go. Swamp forest. I feel like some of our, because we have a few semi-aquatic dragons that I feel like it wouldn't be that surprising if some of them develop something like that, like the ones that are specifically used to living in the more still waters and little swamps and stuff. Could be interesting. I get like a note. My notes are still semi all over the place. Good look into Pippa.
Swamp hippo.
Very cool. Yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of them are like semi-inspired by like real things for what niches they would fill and stuff, which is fun. Like our swamp hippo, which is cool. Yeah. Okay, so since we're already looking at plants and pillar world, that's not what I want. Spec bio. I'm totally super organized, I promise. Okay. The other thing we had talked about, potentially talking about, is domesticable dragons. No, I don't want to ask AI. Go away. Please go away. I don't want that button to ever... Okay. So we could talk about that. I just have some various notes of ones that we've kind of fit in so far. So I don't know. I guess this is the point of like, what do you all think would be the most fun? Do we want to start a map? Do we want to talk about some domesticates? What do we want to do?
I'm kind of up for whatever. I think maybe leaning a bit towards the bio stuff is sort of the better use of our combined skill set, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good with that. I think for what I have to offer, I think I would be more use when it comes to the biology side of things, because I'm not up to snuff when it comes to cartography.
Plus, a lot of that would mostly just be like, that would be more the approach if we just wanted to like chat about random stuff while I draw things, because like there's a lot of just downtime when you do that. But okay, so the things that we have thought about so far for our domesticable dragons. We have the rideable dragons, which I don't really have a lot of notes here because I have those elsewhere, but there's a whole thing. I know I've sent you the notes on this at one point, Bib, but how humans inserted themselves into their social structures in order to sort of domesticate them, if you would call it domestication. I guess you would. Other thoughts are small pest-eating dragons and
cats.
Yeah. Sort of like cats, something like that. And then a like aerial predator. And these could end up being like merged into the same thing, but having like there's this one type of pterosaur that's like the Muppet faced one that they're like smaller. They're so cute. Wait, hold on.
The frog mouth one.
Oh, yeah.
They're so cute.
Yeah, they're really.
Which one is that?
I will show you. Where are they? They're my favorite little dudes.
It's a real shame that in Walking with Dinosaurs, they did such a bad job at reconstructing it, because they're such. I would love to have like a proper paleo documentary. Yeah, look at that. I would love to see that in like a proper like something along the lines of Prehistoric Planet.
I really like them because they have the like more flexible like pinky fingers so they can tuck their wings versus them just like sticking up, which I don't know. I like it and they're very cute. And they're like oh my god. Did you hear that?
No.
I think the entire like 4-inch thick ice sheet on top of our solar panels just all came off the roof at one time. That's what it sounded like. Okay. That was jarring. I was like, what's happening to my house? Okay. Okay. Hello, Digital DD. How big are the rideable dragons? They are big enough. I have the calculations somewhere, but they're big enough for smaller humans, so mostly like smaller people, women especially, would be the riders, anyone who tends to be more smaller stature. About that size. Sort of like a little bit bigger than the Argentavis, probably.
So about 8 or 9 meters wingspan, something like that?
Yeah, probably somewhere in there, I think would make the most sense. Oh, nobody heard it. Yeah. Yes, yeah. So that's them. These ones would be pretty small. Oh, wait. There we go. The cat-like ones, I imagine these would be like pet / they eat pests, very cat-like in terms of personality, in general. So that those would probably be like domesticated the similar way cats are. I'm not sure how domesticated these would be, but they'll be the smaller dragons that produce the silk that would be used particularly in the cluster that has like all the silk rope bridges kind of vibes. Like I imagine them being more like colony type, having some sort of receptor senses that allow them to like tell when like silk is weakening, either like it gives off certain like, I don't know, smells or I don't know, something, and then they just kind of like cluster around and like fix it. And then I have an idea for something that would like protect herds, so similar to like a sort of dog domesticate. And then another one that they would mostly just like harvest things for, but I want to have an idea of this resin that certain dragons have that would have branched off the ones that so like you have the venom and then some branched off and had the silk and some branch off and create this like resin that hardens and can be used for like various things, but they can use it as sort of a way to have harder things because they don't have access to a lot of like metals. So that's sort of the replacement for that. But so like they'd harvest that. I don't know if they'd like domesticate those animals. And then we have our like chicken like dragons. And that's all the domesticates I've thought of so far, or I've come up while we were working through this.
Okay. There's 2 angles I'm thinking of here. So first off, if there are herd protecting ones, what are the herds that they're protecting?
So when the humans are brought over to Pillar World, because they didn't come from there, right? They're about 10,000 to some number of thousand of years ago, they were brought over to the Pillars. And they brought with them some of their own domesticates. So there are some like sheep and stuff like that in some places where they would have survived well enough. So those would be some of the herds. I haven't thought much about like dragon herds because like I don't know how much that would make sense if they already have like a domesticate that they brought over.
Yeah. Well, I guess sort of the other angle I was thinking of, like in this setting, it's like, are mammals kind of still around in the same way they are in the real world? Or if not, sort of what else is filling those sort of like kind of basic niches of like, you know, small omnivores and herbivores and the sort of mid-range sort of predators?
Mostly dragons.
All right, so dragons are replacing that. So like that kind of implies that like in addition to like all these big dragons, that you do have a lot of them in those sort of like, what am I thinking of here? Sort of, like I said, sort of like small omnivores, like I guess what's the dragon equivalent of like a raccoon or a possum or a sheep? And it's like that might not all get domesticated, but it's sort of like, I guess, filling out the options of what's there.
One of my books just fell off the shelf. Anyway, yeah, so we have a few early clades that branched off that kind of end up like filling most of those. So there's like the early armored omnivores, so ones that end up with like armored plating and stuff. Most of them stay omnivores. A clade of like grounded omnivores that end up being flightless. And then there's a clade of like early herbivores that are all predominantly herbivorous, which like, do I have I don't think I have the cladogram for this one put together yet, but like a lot of these fill like rodent-like roles or lemur-like roles, or I guess a lot of birds, like things that eat berries and stuff. So there's a lot of those. Of the ones that we put together so far, at least. But what ends up in this path? Yeah, more like predator avoidant early omnivores. So I haven't thought too much about some of those, but there would definitely be things that fit that role, in theory.
Okay.
I guess my thought is I just so happen to be working on a series about domestication at the moment, so it's kind of fresh in my head.
Shocking.
But just something that occurs to me is that when domestication first kicks off, when you have these very large dragons that they'll domesticate for the purposes of flight, like one issue, like ideally the domesticate will be as dependent on the domesticator as possible. And so the issue becomes, how do you provide for such a large animal? Like if you're going to be feeding the animal, that's going to take an enormous amount of food that you are sacrificing in order to maintain a relationship with this animal. But it doesn't necessarily have to be food that the humans give to the dragons. Like, really, domestication at the end of the day is just another form of symbiosis. And so, as long as the humans are able to provide some kind of benefit to the dragons that would like incentivize the dragons to associate more and more with the humans, then that could culminate in domestication. So, like, for example, maybe the humans, like the pillars that the humans live on, because of the way that the humans like re-engineer the ecosystem of the pillars that they're on, makes them particularly suitable like places for the dragons to build their nests, for example. Like maybe the refuse piles or the scraps of meat and things that the humans throw away, those are very good for the dragon's young, as a food source or something along those lines. Maybe the humans like intentionally build like nests for the dragons, will help to look after their young or something along those lines. So that means that the dragons will intentionally seek out human pillars. And then that could be like the basis of a relationship. And then the humans will artificially select for more and more docile dragons that attack humans. The humans will attack back and kill them, whereas the dragons that are less aggressive towards humans will survive and pass on their more docile genes. And then within some span of time, you eventually get relatively friendly dragons that regularly visit your pillar. And then you can, take it from there.
Yeah, I think that fits into because mostly the riding ones is the one that we talked about this a bit on some of my streams, because obviously, like you said, like big dragon, kind of hard to feed them and all of that kind of stuff. And I think Pavilia mentioned it in the chat.
Are you familiar? I think it's in somewhere around Southeast Asia. There's a sort of tradition of, I don't think they're fully domesticated, but of using these tamed cormorants in fishing, where it's like cormorants, they're like pretty good at like going in the water and fishing for fish. And I think the way they sort of tamed them was they put this like ring around their neck so that it was kind of like a bit too tight for them to properly eat a fish. And then they'd have them like catch a certain number of fish for them. I think it was usually like 7 fish. And then they'd like loosen the sort of neck collar so that they could like then catch another to eat for themselves. And so it provides a thing where like they don't have to be providing the food to the animal, but the animal still kind of depends on them in a way to get their food. So there's maybe a certain opportunity there to, like, if they're originally used for hunting by the humans, then there's a sort of dependency there.
Yeah.
Wow. I'd not heard of that. That's really cool.
It's
Just
sort of,
the-
I think I've heard of it because it's sort of a famous case where it gives a clear indication of an animal that can count. Because it's sort of like a lot of things can sort of recognize like 3 or 4 items, but in this case, it's like they have a clear ability to like count up to like 7, because like
Mm.
once they've trained them, there is a pattern. Well, they'll catch 7 and then refuse to work anymore until they've like had the collar loosened so they can eat one from themselves.
That's really
So
cool.
it's just sort of this funny little case study of that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and something like that could be interesting. Because yeah, like I feel like just
I think I'm remembering this right.
trapping flying dragons isn't going to work as well, especially with like larger things.
Well, they still have eggs, right?
No.
Like they?
For
No?
some of them do. Some of them do. Basically there's one path of flightless basil dragons that
Okay.
are like egg layers, and those branched off earlier, but the rest of them are, okay, correct me if I get this wrong, ovoviviparous? Is there enough bees in there?
Ovoviviparous.
Ovoviviparous.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have like the eggs hatch inside. So they give live birth, but there are
Okay.
eggs in the process.
Still maybe kidnap the young, but it would be tricky. I mean, I guess if they're still nesting somewhere, there's in principle a vector of attack there, I guess. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's kind of the same with a lot of domesticated animals. You kind of have to capture them young,
Mm-hmm.
unless I think you can tame larger ones
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, but it's trickier.
Yeah. The idea that we had worked out for the, I can't remember which stream, I think, was this entirely in Bavilia's watching? Did we entirely figure these guys out in a Patreon stream, or was there something else with them? I can't remember. But the idea was that a lot of the stuff Bib's saying, right, where they like maintain like certain caves and stuff for them to live in and clean them and help protect them and protect their young, and like it's a, you know, and they provide a certain amount of food to them, which a lot of it I think would be fish. Like they'd basically like fish farm for them, but they're omnivores, so like they might go out and hunt other things and stuff as well. And then the big thing with the rideable dragons is that they inserted them into their social group. I did I message you about this at some point, Bib? I feel like
It might have come up
I
at
can't
some
remember.
point.
But the idea is like it's based off those birds that are, they do like the mate bonds, right? Where they bond for life with one other bird, but then they are promiscuous in that they're not actually necessarily having kids with that bond. They're just like child raising partners essentially, but then they go around and have the similar like, you know, dominance fights, and the more like dominant males have young with more females, and the more, you know, like all of that stuff. So the idea was that humans would essentially step into that like pair bond relationship with the like female dragons, which are larger. So like the female dragons are the ones they can actually ride, and the male dragons are smaller. So they have essentially put themselves in that social position where like they do all the like the dances and the rituals and the stuff to like, you know, like it wouldn't be called like a mate bond because that's weird with a dragon, but like they essentially become their partner and help like protect their kids and whatever, and then they're allowed, like they let them ride them, so it's a very like reciprocal relationship. And then relatives would also help protect their relatives young, which I saw a lot in, seemed pretty common in a lot of different like bird species and stuff, that they would do that. So then like the males and the other relatives would still have, you know, purposes, and also for producing young and all of that. I think that was most of the ideas. Okay, yeah. Yeah, but they said it was discussed in like one of the patrons. That's what I thought. Yeah. There are stories of ostriches finding humans more appealing than other ostriches. I don't know what the story's behind that, but that's bizarre.
Sometimes animals just do weird things.
Yeah.
There's always a certain degree of wiggle room in these things because just you never know what they're going to do next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that was the idea for the rideable dragon, which is the only one we really thought about extensively. The rest were kind of like, where would we roughly put these in the clades? ? I do feel like the herd type domesticates would definitely. I feel like they're the biggest area that I don't have anything in at all because it kind of makes sense, like for meat or other things that they'd have that. Like even if they have other ones that they brought over, because they'd be more adapted for it, than if they brought over
something maybe like a turkey, where it's sort of in the process of domestication, maybe become flightless.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe an interesting angle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I feel like there's a lot of room because like the thing with the basal egg layers, right, which are the ones that I want to have a group of those sort of be like the chickens of the world, except they're very different than chickens. It's just, I don't know. There really isn't anything similar to them with chickens other than the fact that they're small-ish and they lay eggs and they're semi-vicious.
Did pterosaurs have very leathery eggs?
Ooh.
I don't know how well known that is. It just has unfortunate implications for their culinary traditions.
Yeah. Well, and it could have changed over time. And like, because these aren't like actually descended from pterosaurs, so there's no reason why they would have to be the same.
Yeah, I don't know.
But let me see. I think that's because I'm pretty sure I've seen things about them finding pterosaur eggs and like seeing the young. I feel like that was in one of these chapters. Leathery wings. Yeah. I also need to figure out more of the display features. I haven't done too much on that, other than I know I don't want crests per se in the same way that pterosaurs have them, because I don't want them to look like pterosaurs if they already have the wings.
Mm-hmm.
The shells of all 4 known pterosaur eggs are fairly similar, though the eggshell histology varies a little. It is consistently very thin, at only 0.03 to 0.25 millimeters across, only 1 layer of calcitic shelly material. It would give them a rather soft parchment-like texture, more like those of modern reptiles than hard-shelled eggs of birds.
Yeah. I think that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so like it could be more like that. I mean, I feel like it could make sense that they would end up becoming more hard-shelled over time.
It's a minor detail.
Yeah, but I could see there being multiple groups of them that are like domesticated in various ways, like ones that are, because it would also probably depend really per cluster which ones were domesticated based off what they had available and what their purposes were. So I can imagine some being very domesticated early on and some being more like recent, more like the turkeys.
Yeah. I mean, that's also the thing here is like, because there's so much of an island effect, there doesn't necessarily have to be like a small omnivore clade, a like herbivore clade. It could just be like random one-offs in a lot of different islands.
Yeah. Which is sort of like why I've been doing a lot of this at the clade level too, because like once we get down to actual like individual dragon families, like they'll vary a lot and then they'll be assigned to specific like clusters or specific pillars. But I'm trying to like, even though it wouldn't actually be like this, like half these clades are more just things that would have all sort of maybe what's the word? Something evolved? Evolved in similar ways to have the same features?
Convergently evolved?
Yes, yes.
Oh yeah.
A lot of these could have been more convergently evolved and like they shared the same common ancestor, because like it would be kind of very different all over, but also the scope of that project would be a little I don't know. So I'm faking a little bit with these of like these are the groups of clades that would probably things like this in all the different places, and then all the individual families can be specific to like different clusters or pillars and stuff.
I have two random thoughts.
Okay.
One of them has nothing to do with domestication, but just the talk of eggs and nests, etc. has just made me think about the possibility of brood parasitism. So I don't know. There could be like some brood parasitic dragons, like cuckoos, that lay their eggs in the nest of another dragon, and then trick the dragon parents into thinking that the offspring is their own.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I don't know. There may be something fun in that. And the other thought was, so we have, you say, like these sort of dragon-drawn air sleds. How feasible is it? Is this kind of like is this more like a chariot where there's like someone who has to be like essentially like holding like reins in order to make it work? Or basically what I'm getting at is how feasible would it be for them to transport a domesticate from one pillar to the next? Like if they wanted to get one of the dragon chickens, do you like stick it in a dragon sled and like, or
I guess the way you described it made me picture like a towed glider.
It's based off I can't remember who came up with the idea. I feel like it was one of my patrons, but in World War
II, they used a lot of the towed gliders.
It's
for,
sort
like,
of
moving,
that
like,
idea.
vehicles and stuff with paratroopers.
It'd be that sort of idea where it's like a plane. It just doesn't have an engine. They pull it. You might have someone in it to help like steer like some rudders or okay, yeah, it was Bavilia's idea. Thank you, Bavilia. And then or like to disconnect it somehow, and there'd be like little like runway type things to land them on, but they wouldn't be powered. And the idea would be that they would be big enough for like carrying goods to some extent. You wouldn't be able to carry like a ton. Like it's not like it's a ship, right? But you'd be able to carry some stuff like that. You'd be able to carry some domesticates. It would just be a little bit more limited. And yeah, it might be something where you have larger dragons, like you've bred like maybe a group of larger ones in areas where you do this more to be able to pull them more, something like that. So you'd be able to move the domesticates around to an extent. I think it'd be a lot harder before that technology to move them around, other than like, you know, if a dragon were to pick up one of your herd and take it somewhere else and leave it there, and you know, that sort of a vibe.
Might be a little bit of sort of artificial niche partitioning. If you have like towing dragons and riding dragons, it's like slightly different breeds.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And like, I like the idea of them looking very different too. Not like super different, but more like wild horse herds. You can see a lot of like variation in them. But we apparently have a study link in the Discord where ostriches 70% of them reliably hit on the humans when they were around.
Wow.
I feel like that's really funny.
Do you think they prefer lankier people, or?
I don't know.
What aspect?
It just makes me think of I worked in a zoo for a little bit, and we had some Indonesian kune pigs, and they were really friendly to everyone except for me and one other member of the team, who, for absolutely no reason, we never did anything wrong to them, but for some reason, every time that we got close, they would get like noticeably like agitated, and if we got too close, they would like snap at us. And so, I don't know.
Did you have any like physical similarities or something? Like,
No. She and I we couldn't find any common. We didn't like start work at the same time. It's not like we were like the new people that they didn't know how to react to. Like, she'd been working there for years when I joined, and just for whatever reason, we just gave off bad vibes. It's also at my old job at the museum I used to work at, we had a tank of Madagascan hissing cockroaches. And as you do, and we, as a visitor engagement activity, one of the other team members and I would sometimes, because they're fairly large animals and you can just sort of pick them up and carry them around. And the other member of staff that did this, the cockroaches absolutely loved her. She would be able to, like, she would just put her hand down and they would just crawl into her hand and like curl up. She would carry them around and she would set them down on the ground and they would like do a little loop and then come back to her, and they just absolutely loved her. They hated me. And I don't know why they were so, like, they're called hissing cockroaches because when they're, agitated, they make this hissing noise. And as soon as I even attempted to pick them up, they would start hissing like crazy. And if I did try and pick them up, one time they actually drew blood. So they would, I don't know. I guess I just give off just pigs and cockroaches just don't like me.
Incidental scent thing.
Oh my gosh. That is funny. I don't think I've ever had like an experience like that with animals. I mean, I know like friends who have like who've gone to like petting zoos and like certain animals just like hate them, but I also don't like interact with tons of animals, so like I don't know. Maybe there's a secret nemesis out there that I haven't met yet. The
capybaras like me though.
Yeah.
So. Oh.
I've never seen a capybara in person yet.
Oh. They're quite nice.
I've seen them at a zoo at some point.
I don't know.
I haven't been to a zoo in ages.
I'm gonna like Google this. With the apparently there's a special capybara place in Virginia that has a zoo, or there's like a couple like really small places that have them. But like yeah, they're not in any of the like big zoos or anything. Might have to look into that at some point because they look so cute. They're in one of like the games I play where there's little like capybaras and they're so cute.
Caviomorph rodents are, I think, very cool. I might have stopped me if I've rambled about this before, but just like the fact that because all caviomorph rodents, so like the capybaras, the New World porcupines, the Patagonian mara, all of those, they all descend from one group of African rodents that got washed out to sea in a storm about 30 million years ago and rode across the Atlantic and washed up in South America. And there would have been like somewhere around 20 original individuals from this population. And they managed to survive and become one of the most successful groups in South America. So
it's so cool.
It's the same for New World monkeys, isn't it?
Yeah.
They just turn up in the fossil record at one point. Probably one thing. So that's the same sort of thing that could happen here. Just one little group of flightless animals happens to make it across to one of the big pillars.
And just does a really good job.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the storms and the winds up here would probably be strong enough sometimes. Like, I mean, I don't know if it could like straight up carry. I mean, they all have wings, whether or not they're like, I don't know if they'd provide any sort of gliding help if they were like blown across in a storm or something, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, those sort of dispersals of animals across the sea are sort of generally quite small individuals at first. How much that translates,
Yeah.
hard to say, I guess, but
Yeah. I would expect smaller animals to be thrown up in
yeah.
storms more than larger ones. Someone was joking earlier about like fishnados.
Which is then why part of why you get so much like island gigantism is
Mm.
because like generally the animals arriving at the island, none of them are like large enough to fit those sort of big bodied niches when they arrive. So it's just whoever happens to be around.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that makes sense. And it makes me think about like when the people show up too,
Hmm.
because that's sort of there's a weird path of how that connects in my brain, but I promise it does connect.
No, I think I see what you're getting at.
But like when they arrive, there's going to be very large predators, very large flying predators, which I don't know how much we have history of that from on Earth. Like I know there was
I mean, they were around, and then we kind of killed a lot of them. So.
Yeah, but they're less prolific, I would think.
I think maybe a decent comparison would be like New Zealand, because New Zealand had the Haas eagle, which preyed on like giant moa and things.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it would be
think of.
Interesting. It there's a podcast, or not a podcast. It's like a video series where they talk about what if people went back to this point in history, like would you have survived? And obviously the answer is always like no, but like they talk about it in a let's have fun perspective. And there is an island that started with an H in Europe that had like a giant predator pterosaur.
Oh, what is this?
Yeah, Hasag Island. Yeah, that one.
There we are.
Yeah. And they were talking about like, oh yeah, and you're just like hanging out. Everyone's super chill. All the dragons are super cute. And all of a sudden, from the sky, death. Which would be funny. We'll come back to that in a second. Lilia had a note that I'd forgotten to make here. We'd done the calculations. The largest gliders that could be pulled by the biggest dragons had like 2 tons of useful load, but most would be much smaller.
That's not bad.
Yeah. You could get a lot across in 2 tons worth of carrying capacity.
I mean, yeah, if you're willing to spend a lot of time on it, that's like a lot of livestock you could move around.
Yeah. And this would be the main way they'd like spread stuff between the pillars and stuff. So like, you know, the goods and all of that. Part of why they'd put so much effort into like having the dragons, because that would be a huge boon for them, being able to have that sort of capability.
While we're on the subject, and while it occurs to me, thinking of ways that animals could disperse between pillars, I'm reminded of in the book After Man, A Zoology of the Future, one of the more fanciful ideas is the parashrew, which is this kind of very small, I can't remember if it's a true shrew or just a shrew-like animal, but the young are born with basically like very fluffy dandelion-like tails, so that the winds pick them up and like blow them across, and that's how they disperse, which is very exotic, but it's just an idea for a dispersal mechanism that doesn't involve wings.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. Spiders can kind of move around by like sort of using like silk strands to sort of give them lift. The whole funky thing.
Yeah, and we do have silk producing dragons.
Yeah, it probably doesn't scale up very far, but
I was wondering because like I know they'll probably be with the pillars that are closer together. Like you could have large enough dragons that could theoretically like shoot out bits of web and like latch onto the cliff and like move across like that. Like that would be doable if they're pretty close together. I almost wonder if like you could just have little spider dragons that just like weave little like parachutes and just go like parachuting with their webs.
Well, I'm reminded of
There's
The
a good
Future is
upgrade.
Wild, where there's the silver spiders. The way they make their webs between mountains is that there's one specific caste of the spiders that use their silk to like glue a fluffy dandelion-like seed on their back, and then they jump, and then the wind carries them across. So similar sort of idea.
That.
Yeah.
Funky.
I wonder if the spiders could also probably just like, because we do have a clade of like bola shooting spiders. I feel like it could be an easy branch off of that to just shoot at larger flying dragons and just like catch a ride too. Yeah, because that would definitely be interesting. I mean, there were more the Velcro dragons. And then, I don't know if I need to remember to actually set them up, but like the dragons that would, and maybe there'd be multiple of these, but that would just enjoy like picking up animals and taking them places for fun, like that just like messing with their prey.
I mean, killer whales kind of do stuff like that sometimes, so not totally implausible.
Yeah, and it could
Might
make
be
sense with,
again
like,
the sort of thing that like usually kills the victims, but every now and then something survives.
right. And some of them are fairly intelligent. Like I could also see them being like, well, this is my main hunting ground. You know, I want more of these available, so let me pull some of these over to add to my available hunting grounds, or maybe I'll eat him later, but then maybe I'll forget or something. I could see something like that, maybe.
I am also thinking of bowerbirds, and various other birds have a similar thing where, as a sort of mating display, they gather a bunch of like interesting objects that they gather from across their territory and like assemble it together in one sort of display structure. And so maybe some dragons, as a way of sort of advertising their, the sort of breadth of their hunting ground, I guess, they could take almost like trophies, various objects, including possibly prey items, and sort of put them together in the nest. And look at me, look at all the crazy things that I've picked up over on my travels.
Yeah,
and then some of those might survive.
I'm thinking about more. Is there something, because like the pillars do give to the dragons, I could see there's a way they could just use it as sort of a pre-existing pen, like a relatively small pillar, if they just wanted to like grab a few flightless animals from somewhere and then just drop them there to eat it for later, or maybe as like part of their like mating ritual they could drop a few things and then like display to the females like, hey, here's this prey I've captured that we can eat later at our leisure.
Yeah,
Like,
I feel like that could be cool.
I don't think there's any parallel for that on Earth, but like,
Yeah, the how disconnected they could be could definitely be something interesting to play with that. Vivilia says, oh, you could also have dragons engaging in ranching behavior like the ants that farm grubs.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at, where it's like the fact that it's like kind of somewhat unlike any natural environment we have here. It's like you have this sort of pre-made holding area that something might adapt to use in a way that we don't really see on Earth.
The closest thing I can think of is the long-fin damselfish has domesticated a kind of mysid shrimp, where the fish build these special reef gardens where they cultivate this type of algae, and then the swarms of shrimp come and live on these little patches of the reef that the damselfish looks after. And then it allows the shrimp, it eats all other species of shrimp except this one particular kind of shrimp. And this shrimp helps to fertilize the algae with their excrement. And so it's kind of like it could be called farming. Yeah, so similar kind of idea.
Yeah, I like the idea of that. And like it wouldn't be that hard to come up with like if there are certain pillars or areas of pillars where they have certain like an invasive species or something that's like a problem, and it's like, okay, well, if we keep bringing these types of dragons over that like kill it off, like I could see something like that too, upscaled or anything in that variety fairly easily. It'd be cool. I like the idea of them being more intelligent because I do have the like I do want them to be generally more intelligent, like most of them anyway, in the like more in the crows and killer whales and like that sort of end of like really interesting like social behaviors and tactics and stuff, which also is sad for our poor humans, but I honestly I really don't know how our humans are not going to get just massively eaten, but they'll figure it out.
But they might at first.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe part of the impetus to get their own domesticated dragons.
To help protect them.
I mean, if they are, again, they're just sort of showing up, like, within the last 10,000 years, just a portal opens and they're just kind of there now. So they've not co-evolved with any of these animals, so they may not necessarily have the instincts to recognize them as prey items, so that'll give them at least a little bit of, like, a buffer to not all immediately die.
That's true.
Yeah.
Like, killer whales don't really tend to hunt humans.
Yeah. Might have buffer. Yeah.
It's similar to the idea of island tameness, where a lot of animals on islands tend to be less skittish than those on the mainland, just because they have fewer predators and just the ecosystem isn't as competitive. Which is one of the reasons why the dodo was so easy to hunt and kill, because when the settlers arrived, the dodos had no fear of humans. They would just wander up to them, and the humans just see a big fat bird, like, yeah, let's kill that. Although it is a bit of a misconception that dodos were made extinct by human hunting. It was more the pests like the rats and the pigs that ate all the dodos' eggs. But theoretically, like, all they had to do, but if they had thought to themselves, like, hey, maybe we should take some of these back home with us, then we could have had like modern day breeds of dodos.
That would have been so cool.
Yeah.
Would you still see that like island tamism here where there's so many flying predators, or does that part of like and not
that's one thing. If it's probably, you might not get to like those dodo levels, but like by the same virtue, they might not have any reason to fear like land predators as much.
Yeah, because I imagine a lot of them would be like, there probably will be some in select areas. Like I think we have like a less flighted, like more short-term flighted, like they wouldn't normally fly, but they could fly a little bit if they had to, in like swamps and stuff like that, where they're like not semi-aquatic, but like quarter aquatic maybe.
There is a sort of version of this sort of island. What was it? Island domesticity? Island
tameness?
Island tameless. Where it's sort of like they're not like completely sort of tame and not looking out for predators, but they're sort of not prepared for humans specifically.
Yeah.
might have contributed to some of the Pleistocene
Mm-hmm.
extinctions.
Yeah. Like I imagine when the humans show up, because right, they're going to be dropped in specific areas. I imagine a lot of the groups of humans probably didn't make it. Like
Yeah.
we could just assume there were more that didn't make it. They'd maybe have that buffer, but they'd also probably completely screw over the pillars that they were dropped on. So they'd probably be very motivated to try and access other pillars fairly early on, because like it's such a small ecosystem. Like because they'd be bringing like maybe sheep and like some of their own crops and like probably all sorts of other stuff that would just wipe out what was on the pillar to an extent. I could see something
Some
like that.
pathogens, maybe.
Yeah, stuff like that. I'll probably have to hand wave a little bit that just because like
You don't want it too devastated.
yeah, because like if they're constantly like going to new pillars, like I don't want every pillar to be like insta wiped out. But
Yeah.
I guess part of the idea with this also with having some things that are more similar is that you could assume that the pillars are fairly frequently wiped out and have to be repopulated. So like you get more of that all over anyway. So I guess they'd be like a lot of the plants that are more all over the place would be the ones that are better at finding those opened up areas and taking over them quickly. And those would probably be very successful. And then if a pillar got wiped out, like all the seed burrs and like stuff like that. I could see that. Yeah. Trying to think like yeah, and every group would probably be very different in how they figured out how to survive. Like I could see some like domesticating dragons that would protect them a lot quicker, or like finding ways to like get like if they were in a territory of a dragon that wouldn't eat them but would keep things that would eat them away, like that would be helpful. I imagine the pillar inhabitants being non-mammalian would make the disease transmission a much smaller risk. Oh, that would be interesting if that's...
Maybe. We have a lot of transmission with birds as well, but I don't know. I think you can just sort of do what you want with it.
Yeah.
I mean, generally speaking, in pathology, like pathogens tend to be very host specific, and the ones that are capable of jumping between different groups, that's usually because they have like a multi-stage life cycle, at least in parasites. So that would, yeah, I would say that might mitigate the problem of pathogens, certainly.
Yeah, that would help. One more way to just make things a little bit easier for them, but you know, I mean, being in trees would also probably protect them a lot because like the giant dragons are going to have a much harder time hunting you if you're like in dense forests and stuff. So maybe they'd be like more relegated to those areas for safety that don't have as much open space. See that being a thing. Very cool. I'm trying to think of... I keep like cycling back in my head to these like herd type domesticates. Because I do think we'd have like...
Would there be anything that's sort of... This might be tricky to pull off, but sort of a flock rather than a herd of like domestic animals where like they can still fly, and then you're sort of like dog-like dragons kind of have a role there in like corralling them to some extent in flight.
Yeah, that could be very interesting. Could have... Yeah, like sets of pillars, or like it makes me think of like because at some point I do want to set up like a area where you have a lot of the transhumans kind of migration between the pillars, maybe, where that could fit into that idea very well, like where they herd them between the different pillars and stuff.
Yeah. especially maybe in like an area which has not really many large pillars, so you just kind of can't sustain yourself on a single one.
And you just like kind of hop around between some of these smaller pillars, and then like maybe during certain parts of that migration around, they'd come to where like the people live, or the people would like have to come out to where they are or something like that. Should be very interesting. Because the one thing I'd probably have to do with them that I haven't been quite sure how easily that would work, but a lot of them lead more towards the, where is it? I have it written down because I can never remember what it is. Why does this thing not follow properly? Yeah, they lean more towards the K-type selection. So like, I feel like they could still have big herds or flocks with like more of a K selection end of the spectrum than R selection.
Sure,
And
mammals do that.
There
Yeah.
are plenty of quite like elephants and I mean, sheep, and things that are pretty definitively K-selecting that still that doesn't preclude them from living in large social groups.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So there's no issues there. I should have thought of that. That's good.
I'm trying to think of island-dwelling animals that live in herds.
Ooh.
I'm gonna take a quick bathroom break. I will be back.
Cool. Yeah. Island herds. I'll come back to that in a minute. Will says maybe the people follow the flocks through their seasonal round between pillars like reindeer. Yeah, that would be very cool.
How large did you say the largest pillar is again?
Let me pull up. I have more specific. Floor planning. Let me switch what we're looking at real quick. Share screen. The greatest doodle ever. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I based it mostly, which convenient for you, off a lot of things over in Scotland, since I'm more familiar with the sizes of those. There's not a lot of islands where I am that I'm familiar with, but largest ones tending to be in the 10 to 20,000 square kilometers would be like the very biggest ones. Like the very, very biggest, very rare. But then most of them would be in the 500 to 4,000 square kilometer range for the most part. So, yeah, like Orkney through to like twice the size of Lewis and Harris would be most of the pillars. You'd probably have a bunch of little small ones out and about too, but like those would probably be the size that they'd inhabit probably. I think that makes sense. I don't think I had any other. Yeah, I think that looks right.
I have returned.
Welcome back.
I should have grabbed a snack.
It's relevant. Well, you can always go get a snack. Snacks do have a very high priority, in my opinion.
No, it's too late. I'm locked in.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure how much that size would limit it, because like I feel like that's still a reasonable size for an island. Like,
yeah, it's just I just had to check the relative areas of some islands, so we're not getting anywhere near like Madagascar size.
No, that's much too big. For the most part, all the pillars are small enough that they're not really going to impact like majorly impact any of like the air circulation or anything like that. It'll all be just local effects mostly. Yeah, 500 square kilometers is like 22 kilometers across. You could walk across that in a day. Yeah, I feel like we looked that up in, hold on, let me pull it up real quick. In our high density pillar cluster, which you can't really see. Well, hold on, I'll switch to it real quick. Yeah, so this one, I think... Yeah, like the whole thing is about 102.5 kilometers from the center to the furthest ends, which like a marathon runner could do in like 12 hours. And generic travel could like 3 days. So you could like reach anywhere in this entire cluster in 3 days, which is definitely not huge. But these are also a lot smaller than the other one. Like
Maybe
one
a
of
bit
these...
longer with that terrain, but
But
maybe a bit longer with this sort of very windy terrain.
yeah. Well, we tracked it out with the bot. Like we actually drew the little line and looked at the length of the line for how long it would take to actually follow the curvy path here. We got a little bit too into it. It was okay. But yeah, the little square, like this size box here, is like 1.5 kilometer by 1.5 kilometer.
Okay.
But then, oh yeah, I forgot about the fog farming. Okay, anyway.
Fog farming.
Yeah. To collect
They
all the
farm
fog for
fog?
water.
Just do collecting.
Yeah,
Basically.
like having the nets over where, because there's like when the
Oh.
fog rolls in, it would collect like water. Because
Not
especially
really.
on that size of a pillar, they're not going to have a lot of room for like there won't be rivers on pillars that size really. Like you'd have like little transient like creeks and stuff like that.
Yeah,
More
that's a
so.
sort of tricky element to account for here. Is like, what is water availability gonna be like on these places
Mm-hmm.
where you have potentially for large parts of the year a lot of rain, but not a lot of like capacity to hold on to it.
Not
Yeah.
a lot of accumulation.
Yeah, I imagine to an extent. So we do have a few dragons that have some beaver vibes, where they sort of like dam up sections of water on the
Yeah.
pillars to keep it from going over.
And
But I
I think
imagine
someone earlier mentioned, what was it? Those like, what are they called? Bromeliads? The plants that like hold on to water.
oh
There's
yeah,
maybe like a bigger niche for that here.
we have. Hold on, let
I
me
do
switch
love
back.
bromeliads. They are possibly my favorite flower.
Am I thinking that right?
Bromeliads. What are the ones we have? We have. What of our little friends?
Ooh,
These guys. We've evolved out our cycads. Is this going to show me the big picture? No.
I like cycads.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We've evolved a lot of them out to have like those little like cup type things in them that would hold a lot of water and would like attract animals and stuff to them too. So we have a lot of those.
What if something like a dragon hummingbird type thing, where it has like a long snout to like grab like prey and water from out of these sort of things?
That would be cool. Having a group of like smaller ones that wouldn't
maybe
just because like these
maybe not
ones
like
would
actually hummingbird size, but just something like feels like there's a niche there to just like
Mm-hmm.
doing
I
little
mean,
things.
you may have already seen the bromeliad crab, which uses the bromeliads as like a little nursery to raise its young.
Mm-hmm.
So there would definitely be the potential for something like that here as well.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Give them the note.
Like when I say hummingbird, it's like not necessarily the size, but the way it sort of reaches into something with its snout like that. It would be small. It would be pretty derived.
Yeah, that would be cool. Pillars could also have caves to store water, maybe karsts, so springs may be common. That's true. That would help, having natural springs.
Yeah.
Yeah, the water thing is definitely tricky, which it helps that there's so much rainfall, generally, but definitely something they'd have to be very intentional about. I like the idea of that though, that like, because I haven't had any with like weird face things so far. Even our like anteater like equivalents are more like diggers than they are like using their snouts. Just like, I don't know. It's useful, very useful.
I mean, humans could dig like I mean, obviously things like wells, but also just like reservoirs to just increase the ability of
'Cause
their
that's the
home
thing
to store water.
with the caves. If a lot of these are kind of flattish on top, then the caves might be like below the surface, and so there's kind of not really much way for the water to get up naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be more like something would have to like go down there to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. They'd have to do all sorts of things like that. What do I have? We'll just add a water.
Rivers ever like collapse?
So
I was going to ask the same thing.
usually no. So I do have one of the stories that I plan on writing here, because for the most part I haven't thought too much about the stories I want to tell here, but I do have one that I want to tell in the archipelago one that we've started putting together. But in that one, I have some concept of a way that the magic that maintains the pillars, right, that is providing the effect of keeping them like not eroding away or anything like that, that provides that amount of like protection and stability to it. Having a way for that to be degraded and to occasionally have them collapse. It would be like, yeah, we're getting into like the pillar magic with that kind of stuff. But if the magic is stable and sticks around and isn't touched, I think it would just be fine forever. But it gets into the magic stuff. Like I have these like things that I want to come from like an alternate place, like where the fog also comes from, that would come in and that would potentially be able to do like damage to like the magical, I haven't thought specifically, but like the magical core or whatever it is that like maintains the pillars, and then eventually that be able to collapse them. If that helps.
Related question. Is magic available to the humans? Like, do you have spellcasters?
I am not entirely positive. There will be some level of magic. I imagine it being some level of like lower magic, like less crazy and prevalent. Like most of the magic might just be the fact that there are dragons and pillars. Not that the dragons are magical, but like that's the wonder of the world. Because the idea I have for the first world, yeah, okay. So imagine that there were potentially like lots of different like gods and goddesses, like a whole pantheon that like did this, right?
Mhm.
And so maybe in the different areas where they created the pillars and maybe like, you know, they gave themselves to use their magical essence. I've clearly not thought about this very much, but like use their magical essence to like maintain the magic of the pillars. Like that's where all of their like magic went. I could do in different like areas where that happened. There could be some remaining ways that magic gets brought to the people, and that's how they would have magic here, and that's how I could do it like different in different places, is because it would like come from different gods and goddesses. But I don't think it'd be like spellcasters. I mean, it could be somewhere. Potentially. There's lots of options. I wanted to keep my options open. The only one I have figured out so far is more of like a bond type magic versus a like physical, you do things with it kind of magic.
Because the reason why I was thinking about whether or not the pillars would collapse or fall over was just because I was thinking about the concept of having interchange events where obviously since there are no tectonics you won't get the situation where continents are colliding, but I was like,
Right.
what if you had two pillars that were next to each other and then one of them fell over and they knocked into each other? Then you can get some interchange. But I think the physical impact of the two pillars colliding into each other like that would probably kill most things on both pillars, so probably wouldn't actually be all that productive.
If you had like really close ones, or if you had like one pillar that like halfway collapsed, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Protox. Yeah, I mean, I could see something like that happening. And like, it could be interesting to have a few pillars like that have at some point collapse. Like, I like the idea of them having this lingering fear of like, it could happen. They could collapse, but it couldn't happen very often, or like, they wouldn't, if they just collapse, they'd die.
Yeah. Just
What else we
have like
call-
one spot where there's like a town where half of it collapsed away 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And they all live in fear, and because that would also be something that would very interestingly tie into their religions and beliefs and stuff, is like, whatever beings or forces they think can keep their pillars standing, they probably want to keep those very happy.
That is a good point, Bavilia.
Mm-hmm. I was so sad.
Yeah, when there's the term pillar just immediately made me think of something very long and tall. But yeah, realistically speaking, they would be a lot more wide than they are tall.
Let me see if I have the picture of this somewhere. I started trying to draw it because I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be so cool to have a 2-scale thing? But it was like, it was so wide. And then the height was like, meep. I was devastated.
Just have fog everywhere.
Yeah.
Just fog. It's just, whenever you look at it, it looks like it's emerging from the clouds and the fog. But then if anyone ever goes down to it, it's like, oh, ground's just right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. I feel like that's kind of how they'd treat it. What about a densely populated city-state pillar, which is small, crashing deliberately into neighbors' big but separately sparsely populated pillar? Oh, I don't even know how they do that. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, I did briefly consider that maybe the magic part is that everything that would happen on a pillar at 1 kilometer could also just be the same if we added an extra 100 kilometers, and the magic just makes all of that work, and they are all really tall, and we just pretend. But I was like,
the actual surface, does that play into the world at all? Like, what's happening down there?
I mean, the main idea is that there's this fog, right, that is deadly to everything so far. And it started taking over Pillar World the way, your pantheon protected them is by lifting up the pillars, so they are all above the fog now. And then the reason they took the humans and brought them here is because the fog was also taking up their world, but they're like, we already got these pillars over here, so you just go over here too, have fun.
So if it's just like deadly fog, I guess
yeah.
in a sense it sort of doesn't, it's just out of context, like what the actual altitude is.
Yeah, for the most part. Like, I imagine on certain days they might be able to like sort of see through it, but for the most part, everything under like a certain depth is just the fog. There'd
So
probably be some
like,
sort of...
you're not measuring altitude relative to real ground. It's just there's some like level of the cloud deck.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how much they'd actually be able to see, like, because like you can see down, like if they're only like a couple kilometers up, they could see the ocean if the fog wasn't there. So like they'd have some context on days where it's like thinner, maybe, if it like, because I imagine it would still have some level of movement with, air circulation and stuff like that. Probably like move it around. So like maybe some days they could see the ocean and be like, whoa, that's so cool. I don't know. But mostly not. Render distance limitations, yeah.
Is it known? Well, number one, is it known to the humans that the fog is dangerous? Like, would they have enough context to know that, we mustn't go down there, because if we do, we'll just die immediately?
I imagine, so they'd start with, like, they would be familiar with the fog when they left the place they lived before, right? So, like, the fog would have been a concept there that was slowly spreading. And then once they arrived and they were able to ride dragons, like, they'd know what happens when they go down into the fog. I have this...
if you're trapped on a small pillar with dwindling resources, you might like try and climb down, and then
Right.
if everyone who does that doesn't come back,
Mm-hmm.
pick up on it sooner or later.
Yeah. Yeah. So like they would have figured it out. And I imagine it's like if you were to just like slightly dip in the edges of it, there might be certain like plants or something that has some sort of a like I imagine it being sort of like a sticky corrosive kind of thing when you go into it. So like if you only lightly touched it a little bit, got it immediately, and they like cleaned you off and put the stuff on you, you could like maybe survive it, but
So there could be some extremophiles, like some species that are specifically adapted to living like right at the edge of the fog zone, that when you start going down in the pillars, you get these increasingly weird looking plants and animals that tolerate the fog to some limited extent.
Yeah, something like that could be interesting. The idea of things that could like dive into it for short periods and then come out. I haven't spent much time thinking about those specifically, but like there'd be something that would figure that out, right? Especially if there was a plant that could help with it, then that shows there's some sort of chemical thing that would help. Maybe they'd coat themselves with it and then go fog diving or something. I don't know. Or just naturally be able to
just have mysterious beasties that you only catch glimpses of
going out of the fog. Yeah. It provide a little bit of that like creepiness, because they would totally need that more with like random giant flying predators around, It's clearly not creepy enough. And then there would be the things like the magical things that would come out of the fog, which are going to be like less biological and more like monstrous creations, I guess. I don't know. In theory, I don't know. I have the idea of them coming from wherever the fog came from. Just being not evil, but like, fill that role.
Alien.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly, Bavalia. The sky is terrifying, so the ground has to be even more terrifying to make the sky still seem worth it.
I also like Bavilia's idea of places that are pillars that are like just above the fog.
Mm-hmm.
You just gotta pray the wind doesn't turn too hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that would be very interesting to do. I'll not forget that. And dive in. If fog. Algae, it's always algae.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how much like the lack of like oceans would affect things, like all the resources they wouldn't get from that. It's a thing I keep seeing, like going through like the pterosaur book too, is like so many of them were specifically adapted for like coastal fish hunting or going more offshore fish hunting, and then thus being more aquatic. And like there's not actually that many that were just completely terrestrial. Like some of them were, but like
part of it is that there's a certain preservation bias there because anything that's in a marine environment is going to preserve more. But also it might just be that they were like wide ranging, so like fish is going to be part of your diet, but it's not necessarily everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you're migrating between continents, then stop off and get a snack when you're flying over the ocean. But also it's worth noting that the two biggest known species of pterosaur, or genera of pterosaurs rather, Quetzalcoatlus and Hatzegopteryx, were both predominantly terrestrial, and they fed a very large portion of their diet was from terrestrial prey. So you can definitely have very big, very wide-ranging flying animals that still primarily feed on terrestrial prey.
Even though one was on an island.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. I need to look up those more because I don't think those are actually in my book unless they're in one of the like subgroups.
when was your book? I mean, it would be in the Ashdarkids if it's in a subgroup, I guess. When was this book published?
2013?
Okay.
Darkaday. They do have a chapter on Ashdarkaday.
Yeah, that would be them.
I don't think I've gotten. That's like almost the last group. I may have
Yeah,
gotten that far with my big notes.
They turned up fairly late.
Good.
Which book is this? It is Mark Whitten. Yeah.
Ooh, Mark Whitten.
Very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a few others, but this is the one I've been like enjoying the most from like the pterosaur specific perspective. Like I feel like it's just super helpful because it describes things from the context of like, you know. Ooh.
I bought this off him last time I saw him.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And yeah.
That's so cool.
He's like one of those very good combinations. He's a very good artist and an effective writer.
Wait, does he do all the drawings in here too?
I think that's kind of his main thing.
He's a very prolific artist.
Whoa. That's really cool because I was wondering about them. Like, wow, like there's so many drawings in here. That must have been so expensive to pay an artist to do.
1 second, let me see if I can.
Ah, there we go. The part on Hatzegopteryx. I'm a sticky note on that, so I come back to it later. But yeah, like I want to look at that because I feel like a lot of the adaptations that. Why do I have like no sticky notes? We shall use this tissue.
But yeah, but that's like a fairly good mold because the whole thing is them. It's like it's sort of an example of island gigantism in a way because there was like probably no big land predators on Hattig Island, so they turned up and filled that niche, but didn't end up becoming flightless in the process like birds often do.
Right.
They just sort of became these big, sort of probably fairly capable on land, but still able to fly predators.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That would be a very good reference point for those. Like that would work very well.
This was a painting by Mark.
Whoa.
Oh, well, you can see that, but yeah. So he does lots of this kind of stuff.
That's so cool. Very cool. Very cool. Stop in at McPillars on your way to your destination. Get your herd animal to go. I could see it. I imagine a lot of migration in general or moving around between different territories would be pretty popular in this sort of a world.
Sort of yeah.
I don't know enough about the geology involved to know how much sense this would make. But like, if there were any pillars that just sort of naturally had kind of a dished shape so that they could host like large lakes, if those would make for really ideal territories. So there could be a lot of competition for, particularly among dragons, to make their territories, to sort of claim those pillars as their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because we said earlier, a lot of the potential issue with these is that you've got high water supply but not much capacity. So those would definitely be like particularly advantageous.
And a lot of prey would be drawn to large bodies of water like that. So it'd be kind of like, the watering hole in like the Serengeti or something, where you got all of these animals coming to drink from this water, and there's like one predator who has like dominion over this area and uses the lake almost as a lure to attract the prey to come and visit it.
Like,
yeah,
even in like sort of forest ecosystem and stuff, there's always kind of like the river system that everything can go to for water, but you don't exactly have this here, like, because everything's dumping out into the unreachable fog. So there is like a specific issue of how everything gets its reliable water source.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. I'm trying to remember back when we were like originally talking about that, because like, I mean, I know like, and this is partially why it would make a lot of sense, especially in the more like equatorial regions. Like there is a lot of rain, like that helps.
Yeah, it's a sort of thing where it's like it's not like a fundamental issue for the whole concept, but just like something a lot of stuff would have to adapt to.
Yeah, makes me wonder if you'd see like little like camel type dragons or like dragons that can hold water stores. If you'd see more plants that would store water, like cacti, even though it's not really arid in most cases. Like I could see stuff like that. Then
the issue with water storage, at least for a flying animal, is that water is very heavy. So having like a big water storage, like some sort of like bladder filled with water or something, that's going to weigh you down a lot.
Yeah, they'd have to be the flightless ones,
stuff
maybe.
Like dragons. Yeah, stuff like dragons, you're gonna be able to probably fly far enough to like find some good water source. So for them, they're probably fine with that. It's just like those are gonna be sort of concentration points for like prey and predator and so on.
Yeah, that makes sense. A butterfly roof. I can imagine inhabitants them having a butterfly roof. What does that mean? I am not familiar with that.
Probably a water collection thing.
Why is this not letting me?
Yeah, it's like multiple surfaces sloping down to a single
yes.
outlet,
like a gable, but an inverted gable.
Yeah. And then you, I guess in this case, could collect water. Yeah, like human settlers can collect water in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense. Like they'd do that, they'd build reservoirs, they'd build dams, like there'd be dragons that would build dams.
Have
make a lot of sense.
Have you heard of a fairly recent game, The Wandering Village, something like that? Yeah, The Wandering Village.
I've heard of The Wandering Inn.
Oh, it's a recent sort of like little city builder game I played where it's like the land is getting covered in like poisonous fogs, but there's like this giant walking animal with like a coil on its back. I don't know.
Yeah,
there's like some ideas you could take from that.
Yeah, where they walk around on the Onbu.
Yeah.
Navigating a world covered in toxic sports. I've seen this. So like this is definitely something that's like on my list when I am going to allow myself to play it, because I have no self-control. I mean I do, but like very ADHD. If I get hyper fixated on something, it is all I'm going to do for weeks. So I have to selectively decide when I allow myself to start games.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting one. An interesting one to do.
But yeah, I just saw that because there's a whole sort of like water collection mechanic there as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, that would be cool. Are there side effects of things that evolve to conserve water? Like cats have concentrated pee, or would that have that same thing where like
it would be a that is true. Like camels, during the World Building Festival, I managed to somehow talk about reindeer urine, so now why not? Let's talk about camel urine.
Let's do it.
Camel urine is, I believe, it is the most viscous urine, certainly of any mammal, and possibly of any terrestrial animal. It's like very thick. And Also, camel feces, I believe, is the only type of, or one of the only types of mammalian or animal feces that is flammable because there is so little water.
Shout out to the grad student that spent his degree measuring urine viscosity. That's probably how that worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it would be an interesting thing, especially if they needed fire starters.
That's actually just a good point. I mean, I think a lot of feces will burn if you dry it out, but that does occur to me that, like, yeah, fuel is gonna be probably fairly limited on a lot of these pillars.
Yeah.
You need
Fuel
it.
will be limited, which is also why I think it'd be hard for them, like, I don't know. I just think the colder pillars would be really difficult for them to survive on, but the warmer ones make that a little easier because it'll be very limited. And
But
again,
even
like,
without it being cold, like if you need to do, I don't know if there's any like metallurgy going on.
so there will be some very small, very limited amounts of metallurgy, but the big thing we're replacing that with is I think I have a note on it somewhere, the resin ones.
Yeah.
Being able to, it's like a curing material that they can use to both like make like a glass, and also they could put it over like softer materials of like weapons and armor in order to like harden and strengthen it and stuff. And that's kind of what they have to use as a replacement for a lot of metal just because it's so limited.
Okay. And then it's also beside of fuel. A lot of these areas, you might have like some degree of soil fertility issues in the long term because you're not like getting a lot of soil eroding down from anywhere higher. So like again, feces or guano could be a fairly important resource in that sense.
Again, going back to the mysid shrimp and the longfin damselfish, which use the shrimp to continuously fertilize the reef garden. So you could have, and actually there's a form of agriculture that uses a similar principle, rice and duck farming, where you have a rice field and then you keep ducks on the same plot of land because the ducks not only help to weed and eat all the parasites and pests, but they also help to fertilize the plants. So you could do something, if the soil quality on your local pillar is low, then having other animals come and visit would actually help a lot with fertilization.
I think a few areas have done like different versions of that with like, I think maybe in the West it was more involved in crop rotation, where like one of the things you did was some kind of animal feed, and then you let your livestock graze on that land and then they fertilize it while they're doing that.
Yeah. George is talking about the tragedy of how much mass and energy would be lost from the ecosystem from dragons pooping into the fog.
Oh yeah, there's the overall nutrient balance there is like a bit iffy, but I'm not gonna.
Well, and that also gets into the part that's a little like in the magic hand wavy part, because like we've had to establish that like the magic that's keeping the pillars up is also going to greatly reduce the amount of erosion and stuff that happens, because like there'd be so much wind that's just blowing right across these things. Like it would probably get scraped pretty bare pretty quickly if there wasn't some sort of like magical effect.
The pillars are just constantly slowly rising at exactly the right rate.
Maybe something. But yeah, because also I think we're gonna have it slightly reduce the effects of like storm winds too. Like it's a dampening effect against the winds and stuff in the region right above the pillars.
So it's like in the pillars, it's like the winds just sort of slow down. But then if you're moving between them, you're more exposed.
Yeah. Because I think we did a lot of looks at like, because like if you're looking at a mountain, right, the wind is like traveling up, like it's affecting the airs around it, versus like these small pillars, like they're just up higher up where the winds are just faster, and the winds would just like they're not going to be going up anything to the most
I was
extent.
trying to figure this out earlier. I was thinking about this earlier. Like when you have orographic effects, it tends to like dump water on the like upwind slope and then become dry on the other side. And I'm not really sure what happens when it's flat on top.
Yeah, yeah. Because you'd have a lot of it would just go around. Some would go up. Some would just like, because they're small, right? But you wouldn't have as much of the orthographic effect, I think was what we had come to. Like, you'd still have it to an extent. And also when there's like mountains on the pillars, you would get more of it. But like, you're not having anything that's going to carry it up as much.
Yeah. When you're in the like trade winds like that, you'd be surprised how much local orographic stuff you can have. But yeah, I'm not sure how it balances out.
Yeah. Yeah. And
especially
like
if the wind is then artificially slowing down. I don't know.
Yeah, that's in the hand wavy magical part to make it work. I'm so glad you remember stuff because I don't, Bavilia. I mean, I have the notes somewhere, but yeah, the Buford scale 10 was when we decided the dampening kicked in.
Okay. I think that's like a wind velocity scale.
Yeah, yeah. Because like with the storms that you would get coming through here, and the fact that it's such a small, like they would be so devastating. Based off our calculations.
A pretty high threshold, to be honest, but fair enough.
Yeah, like we want them to still have to like they're gonna have like their homes built in ways where like it protects from the winds, like they'll be like it'll look like it's dealing with high winds, but it won't be so much that it's gonna make it impossible like to, I don't know, have decent sized structures and do stuff at the beginning when it's all, I don't know, less adapted. I don't know.
The thing is, you said there's like it's up to the size of Ireland, I think you said. So it's like there are big islands there. We can have like a substantial like urbanized society just on that island.
Yes.
So it might be like the places we're looking at are in some sense economically peripheral to that, but they still have like their sort of own thing going on.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what I have for the archipelago one, where I don't even know if you can see the maps here. You sort of can, but like you have that one really big one.
Yeah.
And there's going to be like a much larger, more centralized, urbanized society there. I mean, not like huge. I think we did the calculations on it. It's really not that centralized, but
things you could do with sort of the whole cultural and economic element of that, especially if you have like these nomadic groups of herders going around. There's a sort of more, because those like larger ones are probably going to be like where like really large scale like agriculture, like herding of land animals is going to be viable, and then you could have a pretty stark cultural divide with these like dragon riders and so on.
Yeah, which I feel like would be very cool. What are we?
I'm just randomly throwing stuff out.
Oh no, that's good. Oh yeah, 10 on the Buford scale is seldom experience inland, but trees uprooted, considerable structural damage. Yeah, would be the max level of damage faced on the pillars. So still devastating, but not cyclone exterminates a pillar casually. Yeah.
That's a good question George has. How much population? Because like you can't just copy the population of Ireland because you have no fish.
Yes.
So it's like, what portion of the population is fully?
Where do we have this?
Terrestrial.
We did these calculations. Where did they go? We spent like so many streams on this. Hold on, let me find where we had it here. So I know on the high density pillar regions, we had determined that at its maximum extent, it would support probably 25,000 people, based off the having a more like 10% urban-ish population, not full urban. And then where did we calculate this for the archipelago cluster? Example pillar. Hold on, I'm opening up Photoshop. Yeah, so it would definitely be a lot lower.
I mean, globally, yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Just by area.
Okay. Now my computer's thinking really hard. Okay. Let me switch you over. Yes, I know. Oh, stop buzzing. I wish it would let you share multiple screens at once.
I did some math a bit ago.
Okay.
Hold on. It's in here somewhere.
Okay. Of course, I can't scroll in. Can I scroll in?
I did a math bit.
Okay.
My vague estimate is that for like pre-industrial farming in reasonably fertile regions, your typical population density is probably be like 10 to 100 people per square kilometer, you know, averaged over large areas, so like including cities and rural farmland together.
Okay. Now I'm really curious to see how that if we were close to that at all.
I mean, this is, I think I've looked around, this kind of matches up with like what you see in medieval Europe.
Yeah.
And then, what was it like pasture land is like maybe, where did I put my numbers? I'm not sure I worked out these numbers fully, but maybe like a tenth of that. I mean, the sort of the climate situation isn't quite translate over, but that's kind of the range you maybe look at, like a filled out pre-industrial agricultural society.
Okay. I don't think we wrote our underlying numbers down. What we had for this large pillar, which is about a 30,000 square kilometer land area. 30 kilometers square land area. I tend to add extra Ks in places, which is super helpful. Would have 420,000 people, which I think calculated out. I normally make my patrons do the math for me because I'm really bad with the math. I always mess things up. For 20,000 people.
30K kilometers square, 420,000 people. So that's like high, but not crazy.
Yeah. And that was for this one, which sort of relies on being able to get stuff from the other pillars.
Because there's this whole sort of complex, like, family economic reasons where like subsistence farmers tend not to reach the population density they theoretically could if all land was like perfectly utilized.
Right. Yeah. But really what we calculated was like the theoretical maximums. Yeah, because the 5,000 kilometer squared one was 70,000 people, which I think was more rural. And that's kind of based off whatever number we had somewhere for doing the outer ones. George says, you are fortunate that people will pay to do math for you. Yeah. I appreciate my patrons helping, or when I try to do the math, they also have to do it and then tell me that I did it wrong the first like 8 times, which is helpful. We had the number somewhere of how we were doing that, like how much per square mile, but it's not completely out of range of what you were saying, but I'll have to find that number at some point. I seems reasonable.
Yeah, I think the way I calculate it is like if you perfectly use the land, you could get like even with pre-industrial technology, like up to like 500 people per square kilometer. But like in practice, it tends to be more like a tenth of that.
Yeah. And that would all be the like max possible, would depend on where they are, and
Yeah.
I think we had to fudge how, like, what would make them make a town at some point too, because the population density wasn't quite high enough on some of these pillars for them to even have like much more than a small village.
Yeah. But again, that's the sort of thing where it's like maybe it's like you have a town on one pillar and then there's like some farming, these like nomadic flocks or herds or whatever, like going across several neighboring pillars, and like all together it sort of adds up. Or maybe if there's like whatever the equivalent of like a migrating bird colony or whatever on this pillar, that's sort of a resource you could use to support yourself throughout the year if you can like store it well enough.
Yeah, that would make sense. That would make a lot of sense. No. Oh yeah, trying to do like area calculations on this thing was the worst. Figure like coloring them all in and figure out like how many pixels. Blah. Okay. No, that should have been. Yeah, no, I don't think I saved it, Bavalia. I think we erased it. What calculations we were using there, because I don't see that here. I'd probably have to go back through the patron streams when we did it.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know. It was just kind of a sidebar.
Yeah.
I've just done a little bit of reading. I was just curious if there are any plants that are adapted to living in waterfalls. And apparently there are. They're called rheophytes, is just the general term for a plant that is adapted for living in fast-flowing currents. Yeah, RHEOPHYTE.
Yeah.
And
rheophytes.
Wikipedia mentions that in a lot of rheophytes, the flowering will be timed or triggered to coincide with lowering of the water levels. So like if the plant is in a really fast-flowing river, if at any point the water level recedes or the current isn't as strong, then that's an ideal time to flower. And so if, going back to this idea of the seasonal rainfall, it could be that there are some of these rheophytes that are, if they're in one area that experiences heavy rainfall and, a lot of the water that lands on the pillar gets channeled into this river that they're inhabiting. During the time of the year where the rainfall switches, that could trigger, so you could have like this big explosion of flowering and fertilization all at once. And again, that could be like a sort of predictable food source if the humans harvest these flowers for whatever reason, or if they produce fruits. Same basic idea.
That would be cool. I need to look into that. And that's not even like, it doesn't like a specific like group. It's just like a label of plants that do this.
Yeah, it's not like there's just one clade that's done this. There are lots of independent innovations of such things. Yeah.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Doing stuff like, because the one of the things I haven't taken a lot of advantage of is the sides of the pillars, but also compared to the amount of pillar that's available, there isn't like that much sides of pillars, but there's enough that you'd see a decent amount of stuff specialized for life on the sides of the pillars, I would expect.
And it's like, to be fair, even in like tropical areas on Earth, you don't get a lot going on cliff sides. So
yeah, could be a few things. Yeah, I think that would make sense. To figure out where I'd want to put them in my little groups. Maybe a nettophyte. Oh, I'll have to look into that. Yeah. I feel like trying to remember if there were any other like things we started talking about and then didn't go back to. Because some point
went through a lot. I don't know how much time we spent on each of the domestic types.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we mostly had fun brainstorming, which is like fun. That's what we're doing. We're having fun. Are we imagining that there is no life at all below the fog? I mean, I feel like there'd be some. It would just be like very like less explored. And I haven't spent a lot of time on it. But like, yeah, I'd imagine there'd be some things that cross that barrier, just like limited.
It's the sort of thing where I can feel like you can kind of decide to what extent that's like in scope for what you're building.
Yeah. Yeah, like it might be more relevant in like certain clusters. And that's why I kind of like the idea of this where there's a lot of room to have different areas be very different. So I can kind of just focus on the things that I want to be relevant in the story that I want to tell and kind of flesh it out to make like a little ecosystem in that section of it. And then when I go somewhere else, like I could have types of dragons that aren't present in the other place. And there's no reason that wouldn't make sense. And like the magic can be a little different. And, you know, maybe there are places where there's a lot of stuff going on below the fog for some reason or another. But like I don't have to worry about it everywhere, every time, you know? Makes sense. Makes sense. I don't know. Do either of you have any like lingering thoughts?
I did have earlier. I was trying to think about because the talk of the dragons fertilizing the pillars. It makes me think of bats because fruit-eating bats. A lot of the fruit that they eat, the seeds are coated in a special laxative, basically just so that they can pass through the bat's digestive system as quickly as possible. It sometimes, as the bats fly over, it's sometimes called seed rain, just with the volume of seeds that are deposited. I'm trying to think because in this setup, like for plants, you would for like plants that produce fruit and rely on animal assisted dispersal, you would really, really want to make sure as much as possible that your seeds land on another pillar.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of some mechanism that could guarantee that. The only thing I can think of is that, again, going back to the principle of like burrs, if there's some plant that produces seeds that get stuck on the dragon that are stuck solidly enough that they're not going to fall off mid-flight, the dragon has to actually land on a pillar and then deliberately remove them.
Yeah.
And they can fall onto the ground. So as I can immediately think of, that's, I guess, would be like the primary strategy for plants here.
Yeah.
This might be somewhat roundabout. But you remember I had the idea earlier of like some equivalent of like cleaner fish for the dragons who are like taking off parasites and stuff. But if you had something that was like a bird that attached to the dragon, but then also in some way was sort of a fruit or something that encouraged the cleaner things to eat it, and then they would drop the seeds.
Yeah, like picking the burrs off of them and stuff like that, or like the little. That would make sense. Yeah, because I know we definitely have a decent amount of bird things. Bird. Burred. Not to tweet bird.
No, yeah.
Where was the note for that?
There might still be stuff that just kind of has to play the odds of like happening to pass out at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of feels like we would get some disrupting selection where, like, on one extreme, you just have the plants that just produce millions and millions of seeds and just release them, and only a very small number of them would land somewhere. And on the other end, you'd have these very targeted mechanisms like the burrs. Whereas anything that's kind of in the middle ground wouldn't really do as well. So you'd get like very distinct splits in reproductive strategy.
Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense.
There's also, have you thought much about just frugivorous dragons in general?
We have some. Where are they? I think we started looking at that.
That's another thing. We're like on Earth today, that's like pretty heavily bird and bat dominated, and mammals.
Yeah. So I have one specific one that we came up with, the savanna, specifically around the junipers that grow there. So we have those. We haven't gotten any of the heavy forested biomes for the specific families, but they could come from the same clade of like flying berry eater frugivore type things.
I remember these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because they'd be cool. And there'd be a decent number of those for anywhere that has the and like I imagine a lot of these would stick around certain areas. Like if they know there's lots of berries in the trees, like they'd hang out and eat and then go somewhere else to where stuff's rooting and stuff. But like while they're there, like they'd just be hanging out. They wouldn't like be super constantly flighted, like the short distance flighted where they can fly and are like they can fly wherever, but they're more adapted, like generalized to be able to climb and like be in the trees, but then they can also fly if there's like a predator or just if they need to like move locations to find new food. So they would probably be pretty advantageous for the plants to eat them, because like they would be on the pillars for the most part to poop, and then that would keep the seeds there. And like if they just moved around a little bit, maybe.
So I'm thinking about termites.
Oh, okay.
Termites, they are obviously they live in termite mounds, and they have developed a form of agriculture where they make gardens for a particular kind of fungus, and they make them out of their fecal pellets. So I'm thinking out loud here, but like if you had some kind of frugivorous animal that just as a part of its behavior, it made its nest, for example, out of feces, then that would mean that necessarily any seeds in the feces would be within the relative safety of the nest on a pillar. So that would be like a more that would like guarantee for the plant that and then maybe they the plants would start growing, and maybe that could serve as a food source for some of the developing young, and then you could get some kind of farming agricultural kind of relationship going.
That would be cool. It does lead towards there being a selection for encouraging animals that do weird things with their poop for helping the plant.
It does.
There might be a slightly heavier emphasis in this ecology and culture on like feces utilization is just kind of
Yeah. Poop's more important here.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Although, like, having tons of, like, poop-made nests and using all the poop, if it's super flammable, a little worrisome.
That might be like specific to the drier areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just
I
like
mean,
it's the same as like those like guano islands where it's just wherever birds happen to pass over, and then there's a whole ecosystem kind of built on that, and then
mhm.
whole with people, whole economies built on harvesting that.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. And I mean, figuring out how it would work with nests is something that was on my to-do list. So I mean, maybe it just needs to be very poop oriented, you know? Because they're a little like, especially the ones that don't have the little tuck-in wings, like I feel like they're a little bit less able to squeeze themselves into small places than like a bird would, which is, you know, bit of a limiting factor for enclosed nests, which would help protect them and their babies because they have less helpful babies. So they need ways to protect them with their nests. So I don't know. I'll have to figure that out. Feces may be the answer. I don't know how, but
What kind of world have we created?
I know. It's kind of horrifying, but that's okay. There'll be cool dragons that you get to ride and cute little like dragon cat pets, so
Oh.
can't complain too much. Nests. Yeah, I don't know. Well, if we don't have any other lingering thoughts, this might be a good spot to end this stream. What do y'all think?
Okay. Do I have anything? Think. That's all that's present in my head, I guess.
Very good,
Yeah,
very good.
At the moment.
that's everything I've got at the moment.
Very good. Okay, cool. Well, thank you both very much for your brainstorming help and your expertise and thoughts and all the fun things and hanging out with me on my birthday because, you know, this is
Happy
fun.
birthday again.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Okay, so then it's 1:37 my time. At 3 p.m. my time is when my conlanging stream with Jake is. So that's in a little under an hour and a half. So if people are carrying over, I don't know if Jake is still in the chat, but we will be doing our, what did we call it? Like our coming of age ceremony into the as is something. I can't remember what the word is.
As does Iria.
There we go. That one. We'll be back working on that, and then we'll have another stream. So yeah, okay, cool. Well, thank you all.
Later as well.
Yeah, it'll be great. Yes. Yeah, because you can't count on me, Jake, to remember what the name of it is for anything. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna go feed myself lunch, and I will see you all later.
I'm gonna
Bye.
get some.
Bye bye.
Okay.